Welcome to the Senior Podcast Show. I'm your host, Kori Lehr. We are here today with one of my favorite guests. I had to bring him back. He's so amazing. Jonathan Gasso from PARC Home Care. PARC Home Care is one of our senior network partners. He's been on the show before. When the opportunity came up to have him on again, I am so glad that he said yes. So welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Kori.
You have a wealth of knowledge that I think is so important to share with our audience. Obviously, you know that our show revolves around all things senior related. In the past couple of shows, we've talked about senior living. We've talked about memory care and how to work with those affected with memory impairments. We've had someone come in and talk about estate planning, which is really important. But we wanted to bring you here today to share your experience and your knowledge about discharge planning.
Very important topic.
Super important topic. I mean, obviously, we try our best to stay healthy. You know, as we age, health sometimes can be affected no matter how much we try to eat or stay active. Sometimes diseases or illnesses pop up. And also sometimes accidents happen. I'm pretty prone to having some falls and some accidents myself. So, I mean, no matter how hard we try, sometimes accidents just happen. Sometimes you just have a fall. Right. It is what it is.
Sounds like this segment's for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the helmet that I wear when I'm not on the show. Yeah. But with discharge planning, so as hard as we try to stay out of the hospital, sometimes things happen. And the length of stays in hospitals and in skilled nursing facilities is becoming less and less.
Continues to shorten.
Yeah. And last time you were here, you talked about that a little bit and about why having a plan is so good. But I really wanted to elaborate, what is a discharge plan? How does it get created? Who creates it? And all of those things. So what can you tell us about some of the length of stays that you're noticing and sort of trending right now?
So two biggest places where you're going to notice length of stays are being tracked, where there's data being collected, are in hospitals and rehab centers.
Yeah.
And the trend in the last couple of years and continues projecting is that they're going to continue to shorten them. Hospital at home is a new concept that is growing.
Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It does. It does make a lot of sense. So expect to hear that terminology more frequently. Around the country, hospital at home. They want to shorten the length of stay at hospital settings.
I think it sounds bad, but I think when you think about why, there's a little bit of a fair argument, like hospital obtained illnesses, diseases, and
correct.
Things like that. You know,
so being in these acute settings does make you more prone to develop or pick up, a disease that's a little bit stronger, drug resistant.
Yeah, infections or
correct.
whatever.
But we're also seeing that the advancements in technology, the advancements with surgery, the advancements of even having things that are inside of hospital settings can now be brought home. I was so shocked the first time I received a call from a discharge planner that they were sending a client home on a ventilator. And that really sparked an interest for me as to even understanding how somebody's going to go home. That you think of ventilator, you think of a hospital.
They sent him home straight home, and that was from a hospital, not even from rehab.
Correct.
That is
correct.
That is intriguing.
Yeah,
that is intriguing.
So again, there's capability with technology. There's advancements with even machinery that can be done at home. So you said fair arguments can be made. Of course, there's always two sides of a coin.
That's true. If you have the help, right? Obviously, that person must have sort of help, the ventilator especially, right?
So discharge planning, there's so many components that go into determining if somebody can go home with a ventilator, determining if somebody can go home with a trach or IV antibiotics, things of that nature. So they won't just do it just because they may want to, but they would not. It's the health and safety of us as clients, as individuals is more important. But definitely there are options, and they want to exhaust those options to get people out of hospital.
Well, I think you're right too. And I think, it's shocking that they would send someone home, but also those kind of risks of infection and different things still exist at skilled nursing facilities. I mean, obviously they try their damnedest
They
you
do.
know, to make sure that those things don't happen, but things happen.
Things can happen. Also, a component of our health and our rehab is our comfort. And people
Mental.
correct. People have a tendency to do better in their own home setting. So if the environment allows for rehab at home, a lot of people want that. And
They're more in charge of the time you're coming to.
they are more in charge of that. They don't feel institutionalized. They don't feel they're in a hospital gown and
Slippy socks.
Yes, and slippy socks. So it does help. It does help with people's rehab, but it has to be balanced.
Yeah.
It has to be balanced with what is best for the client and what the client can tolerate. So a client may want to go home. The hospital or the skilled nursing facility may want somebody to go home.
Yeah.
But safety of the client, because when you think about overall expenses, our insurances, our healthcare, the finances are a big component.
Huge.
Of what decision gets made. And while there is a lot of efforts to have somebody go home sooner, if they're at risk of rehospitalization, it's going to cost even more.
That is, I feel like that's an entire show in of itself.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really is. And it's such a tough balancing act. And there's always a tug of war between discharge planning and the next setting that somebody is going to because of the level of appropriateness. And somebody has to make that decision. And it's not always an easy one.
I think it also depends on the client's mindset too, because sometimes they get home and they say, oh, hell no, I'm not doing any of this. I'm not taking that medicine. I am not getting up. And that's fine. That's the prerogative. And sometimes we all have days like that where I say, I'm not doing a thing. However, like you also have some accountability because if they do go home with home care, like that accountability is on that company.
That's right.
To make sure that they stay out because Medicare and hospitals look at those things. Why didn't you keep them out? Why didn't you do this and this and this?
When it comes to auditing, and auditing is incredibly justified, you have to explain yourself. And the sad reality is there's sometimes non-compliant.
That's right.
Components to things. There are times where with our social workers, we've had to determine if adult protective services need to be called. Not easy decisions need to be made, but everything is done with the intent of what we feel is best for the client. And yeah, somebody may say everything perfectly correct to a discharge planner.
Oh yeah.
To leave. I have social support. I know how to take my medications. I'm aware of how to do this. And when they get home, it's a very different scenario.
Yeah. The clinician walks in like,
yeah. Where's the family? Where's the family? Or teach back what you are able to do. So, everything that's for the client's best interest should be done, but sometimes things happen.
I mean, yeah, and everybody has that right to make their own decisions, but I think that's why it's so important that before they're even discharged, as part of that discharge planning, that pretty much starts the day you walk in. How do we get you out of here?
Yeah.
Like, that all of that education is being done. If you don't do this, this is what can happen. You know what I'm saying?
So I did a continued education course with Beaumont.
Nice.
And it was regarding advanced care planning.
Okay, that's a good one.
Really interesting topic. And they have advanced care planning specialists talking to people the moment that they admit into the hospital. So with no idea or thought as to when they will actually discharge, they're already having these conversations. So you have to think if that's advanced care planning, which is in itself an advanced topic. Discharging is not advanced compared to that. So like you said, they are already thinking about your discharge from the moment that you're admitting. So they have these components getting ready for your discharge, even while you're just now situating.
They don't even have a diagnosis yet.
You're still situating. You're still situating, and they're they're finding where's your next move.
Yeah, or at least, like you said, finding out what sort of support you have, so that when you are ready, you're not just on your own.
And that does play a bigger factor than people think. When they know you have a strong social support, that does weigh in heavily to when they discharge you.
Who, I know you said that there are advanced care like specialists who will come in the hospital and stuff, but who else plays a role in creating those discharge?
Yeah, so different hospitals and different rehab facilities do use different professions,
Yeah.
the two most common are either nurses or social workers.
I think too, like they do like take everybody's opinion or whatever, interdisciplinary.
Very much
Right? Yeah.
interdisciplinary.
Yeah, I gotta say that.
Yes.
But so I don't know. I guess if a patient fell and broke their leg, they would look at like obviously like general and
So
orthopedic and
correct. So pretty much general and orthopedic, unless they have other comorbidities.
Mhm.
Sometimes cardiologists get involved.
Come in for this, all of a sudden you got that.
Correct. They, along with PT,
Mhm.
OT, speech if it's appropriate,
Mhm.
they're also a part of the interdisciplinary team, and the social worker or the discharge planner, who could be a nurse, and also the floor nurses also have their notes. So everybody's notes are taken into account, and everybody has to sign off individually. PT has to okay for the next setting if it's from hospital to rehab or
Mhm.
hospital to home. PT has to okay it. OT has to okay it. The physician is obviously going to be the final sign off on everything, but it is interdisciplinary. But in the hospital, it's kind of done remotely. Everybody puts their own
Yeah.
opinion, and then the discharge planner is the one who organize all of it. But I imagine if it's a tougher case, I'm sure they're all kind of
Yeah, I'm sure they're
powwowing
meeting it.
powwowing in the
Absolutely.
in the hallway.
Yeah. What do we think is best before we go in here?
Right.
So we talked a little bit about the process of discharging. And I know we also spoke just briefly about like some of the determining factors. Again, it's like like what sort of services do you need? Like what are your mobility? What medications you're on? If you have more, like if you need ostomy care, is that new? You mentioned vents and trachs. Obviously, ordering that equipment sometimes takes time. Have you ever worked, I know because you've worked in pretty much every setting, hospital, subacute, home care. Have you ever seen someone go from hospital to SNF just because of like medical equipment needing for that to be ordered?
I have not seen that. And I understand the line of question because with insurances, things get delayed. What I've noticed a lot with hospital discharges are pending something. So it looks like they maybe are keeping people in hospitals longer. Maybe skilled nursing facilities are unlikely to be willing to accept a client just on that short-term basis. But
Sure,
things do get held up, and insurance plays a big factor in prior authorizations, especially as it comes to DME. So everybody in our world knows Medicare for home health, for hospice, for all these at-home settings, the authorization is not much of a barrier. But when it comes to DMEs, Medicare, as well as all of the Advantage plans, you do have to have something signed off on by a physician. You'll need notes from the therapy department.
Very specific. DME too is the medical equipment. So you're talking wheelchairs, walkers, hospital beds,
Hoyer lifts. So many different
all
scooters when it comes to therapy. But DMEs also can include oxygen, ostomy supplies, antibiotic, IV infusion supplies. Those are part of the durable medical equipment.
That's really important to mention, I think, too.
So with my time where I spent in skilled nursing facility, when I was as an OT, when I was in that setting, we had to play a big part in preparing things for the social worker. And a lot of times discharge planning had a delay, maybe not too long, a day or two, based on when equipment could arrive.
Yeah. That wheelchair is not going to be here for.
Yeah, correct.
I think it's really interesting in skilled nursing. Absolutely, for sure. Within the past 18 months, things have changed drastically. And I think before they would say, well, I have 100 days. I can stay here 100 days. Now, what is it? 20 days? So is like the average length of stay 20? So
20 days is actually the exact number of average length of stay right now.
Yeah, and then less if they can help it.
If it makes sense, it can be less.
Yeah, it's really a big difference. I mean, it's crazy how much that 18 months has made a huge difference.
A lot has changed. I think the skilled nursing facilities, I think during the period in 2020, in the last 18 months, as you
Yep.
said, it was difficult. It was difficult, and there was hesitation coming into skilled nursing facilities. I personally believe what's best for a client is to go to the setting that gives you what you need. So we deal a lot with clients who want to come home because
Yeah.
the avoidance of a skilled nursing facility, and they want 7 days a week of care, and they want therapy and nursing every single day. And I said, well, there is a setting that does offer that. That's not home care. So a big advocate for skilled nursing facilities, and there are great ones.
Yeah, for sure there is. Like, there's definitely still a place for that middle setting, subacute setting, that middle setting. I think there can be a lot of work done. I mean, it's amazing sometimes what 7 to 10 days longer will do for someone.
Absolutely. When it comes to wound care healing.
Mentally, sometimes if you had an accident, by the time they have that whirlwind hospital stay, they would get to the rehab center. They like a couple days more they've had to process and accept what has happened to then be able to turn it around and say, all right, I understand what happened to me now. These are the things that I need to do.
What a lot of clients do when they do go into a skilled nursing facility is they do a lot of their own self-preparation.
Yeah.
So in a hospital, because of the acuity of a hospital setting, you're focusing on your rehab. Everything is about your health and bringing your body back to, homeostasis and balance. Going into subacute rehab, you get a little bit more, but you have time to self-reflect, and you have time to organize, so that by the time you do go home, you have a better understanding of your disease process, you have a better understanding of your social support. But sometimes hospital right to home care, if it's something significant enough, is not always the best setting. And as a home care company, we want to advocate what's best for our clients. I think we would let our clients know at evaluation that, I think you might need more time in a skilled nursing facility, and we do that often.
I think that's amazing. I mean, because you are protecting them from having to basically start all over again.
Right. Ending up right back in the hospital. It goes back into that loop of rehospitalization.
Awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. So what tips would you have or would you share to someone to help make those transitions easier? Whether that's discharging from the hospital or SNF, skilled nursing facility back home.
Yeah. So you do have your social worker or your discharge planner as your guidance in a hospital, and do your own research. They're often provided with a list of places that they've either worked with in the past or are near where a client lives. But I really think clients should not write off any setting. And I think in healthcare, certain settings get an automatic write-off because of reputation or things that happened in the past. I think going and seeing a facility for yourself, understanding what dynamics are inside of a facility, what to expect. Also comparing that to the next setting. Okay, if I don't think I want this setting, I want this. Well, what do I get with this setting? Asking questions, really taking time to be thoughtful, because people will say anything to just leave and then come home and say things like, well, I was told I was going to get this every day. I was like, I don't think someone told you that, especially at home.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
It's intermittent care. So doing your own research and just being very open-minded when it comes to what the next setting is. These are professionals. So a discharge planner is going to make recommendation based on data that they've collected in their years in their profession. So understanding that your diagnosis, the scores that your standardized tests should suggest,
very important,
says that your best setting may be a skilled nursing facility, or it may be home care or long-term care.
I'll say, and families can be involved and help you make that decision too. There are family care plan meetings as well. I think at least one in the SNF. I think at least probably not even a week while you're there to start that discharge plan and say, all right, it's looking like you said, those standardized tests, you're a lower fall risk now than when you came in. You need less supervision based on this sort of test from what happened to you in the hospital.
And I can tell you,
where are you going? Are you going to go to your daughter's house? Are you going to go?
Skilled nursing facility settings, those are typically done in person.
Yes, correct.
So those are face-to-face with a family member and with at least one member of each department's therapy team, social work team, physician team, etc. So those are done in person. There's real opportunity to ask questions. There's real opportunity to see your loved one while the therapist or the physician is describing the setting. So skilled nursing facilities in particular is a really good place to have an interdisciplinary conversation.
Yeah, that's super important. I think too, when we're getting all the information from the hospital or the skilled nursing, sometimes we're bombarded and we can't remember everything because it's so much, it's such a change. So having another supporter there with you to sort of fill in the gap or help you recall everything they said is a huge benefit as well.
You never realize how important having the support of a discharge planner is. Up until these last couple of years, as acuity of illnesses have gone up and the hospital at home setting has become more realistic, you never thought you would need someone who's guiding you from the hospital, even holding your hand back into your next setting. But there are so many clients that I've personally experienced who either wrote off what the discharge planner said, just rushing. They want to go home.
Yeah.
And then they just draw a big blank.
Yeah, they get home and they're like, oh, shit.
They just drew a big blank. I don't know how to manage my IV antibiotics. I wasn't taught. I'm sure you were taught, but it is that it's that intimidating.
Yeah.
It is that intimidating to go home. So having a discharge planner is really such an important component.
And I will say, just as like a slight tidbit here, like this, everything that you're saying and having that support of someone who knows the role and knows how things sort of pan out and how they flow, how to take those next steps. Like we found that a lot, even with our other company, and it's not medical, with the senior movers. Like we found families asking questions like, how do I know this is the right place? What question should I be asking this place that you're helping us relocate into? And like, that is why we came up with our other company, the Senior Advisors, for those exact questions, because as much time as some of these plans take, if you're out of the hospital, most of the time they're not necessarily calling you to follow up per se. And once you're gone, you can't call them and ask them a bunch of questions. They're going to put that back onto the primary care provider.
Exactly.
And so, and even with home health, like there are a ton of clinicians, there are social workers, there are dietitians and things like that to help you, but eventually that comes to an end as well. So then who do you go to for those questions? Just saying.
It's tough being healthy. It's tough to be healthy.
Eating that cheeseburger, But I do want to mention too, if someone feels that they are not ready to discharge, they can file an appeal.
They can. Appeals can be filed.
In both the hospital,
yes,
and
hospital and long-term care skilled nursing facility.
Yes.
Appeals can be made. It's obviously like a tough subject. I don't see appeals oftentimes get approved, but appeals can be made, and you have to provide legitimate reasons why they need to continue to stay, but you also have to, again, be prepared for what I would say is the worst, that it gets denied. I think in other situations in our lives, you appeal something, you expect that you're going to get the grace of more time. When dealing with insurances, when dealing with institutional facilities, it's not always going to be that easy. So for anyone listening, for anyone who really wants to take a bit of advice,
this is important.
Expect that an appeal would get denied and start to prepare the next setting, because once an appeal is processed, they're still planning to discharge you.
Correct.
The expectations are you're still discharging up until the response of that appeal. So if it is denied, there is not a grace period. It's denied. We have been preparing your discharge. So don't write off what the discharge plan is because you're expecting the appeal to be approved.
What's that time frame? Like, let's say like I was going to be discharged from the hospital. How much forewarning do they give me?
So it can be about a day or two before you get a response from the appeal. See, the objective is there's a discharge date set in mind from the hospital, and they want to stick to that date. So your appeal is not going to give you leeway for a day or two. So the appeal, you'll get a response. You'll get a response right at the day of discharge, maybe sooner. So when you appeal, they're preparing you 4 to 5 days beforehand and you anticipate I'm going to need more, at that point, the appeal has been sent in and you'll get your response within a few days.
In the hospital, they make you sign a non-MIC too, right?
Correct.
And so is that 3 days?
Yeah, non-mix are 3 days.
3 days. So that's just basically saying the services are being cut. You are discharging tentatively March 23rd and today's March 20th.
Correct.
So I think that's important for our clients to know. So while they're doing the discharge plan the entire time, they do give you a heads up and say, they're not just going to say, oh, hey, today's the day.
Nope.
Out you go.
Nope. They'll let you know. They'll let you know the expected discharge date. And sometimes they'll let you know anything beyond that is not covered.
Right. And I think that's important to say. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like it's been a minute since I worked in skilled nursing, but I feel like, don't they, when they do the appeal, and if they stay longer, aren't they sometimes responsible for having to pay whatever that is? Insurance won't cover it. So if you're there for 2 days longer than what the insurance said, waiting for that appeal process, you could be responsible financially for those couple of days
you
waiting.
Would be more than likely subject to sign something that this will not be covered by insurance if you want to continue to wait the response of the appeal. Yeah. Because appeals, there's no guarantee of when the response would be.
That's right. That's the sticky part that you also run into.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clients often feel they're not ready, or the family members feel that the client's not ready because the family members don't know.
It can be a huge change in status.
Correct. When we talk about hospitals at home, we talk about home settings, family members have to change their lives around what's going on as well. Yeah. And people with work, life, children, other balances that they have to deal with in their life, they may not be prepared for the level of care that's anticipated. Mm-hmm. So the dynamics of discharge planning have so much to do with the client. They really do weigh in on the families in the home as well. Yeah,
especially like you said, if that's hospital at home that they're going to call it now, then that's a lot more support. Obviously, home care, skilled home care, I should say, depending on what services you're getting, you might have someone there 3 days a week. You might have the PT there one day, the OT there one day, nurse there one day, maybe an aide come in one day for a shower, but they're not there all day. Yep. And I think that's a big misconception too. I'm going to be fine. I got home care. They're going to be there every day, all day. And it's like, we got to, you get an hour.
And I'm passionate about what we do. And I love home care, and I love the ability to care for people. It's not a replacement for family. It's not a replacement for caregivers. We do a lot of education. Mm-hmm. We prepare the families, which is what Medicare expects us to do.
Yeah. Exactly. Like there's a rule for that.
There is a rule for that.
There's a rule for that. And two, like the discharge planners, will help you find a home care. They will, if for some reason, they will help you find resources for private duty caregiving, which is more of that companion care that is helping you get dressed and things like that. That's not billed under skilled care.
Discharge planners are almost like professional networkers. They have to have the ability to provide clients with options, and they have to be able to provide clients with specialties that may be what they need. There are agencies who specialize with mental health. There are agencies who specialize orthopedic, and so many different things on the spectrum that people specialize in. The discharge planners have to be aware of these because they need to give their clients great resources. Mm-hmm.
I think, after, even if you have done hospital, then you went to skilled nursing, and then with home care, obviously that entire time you're physically progressing as well, right? You've had lots of steps and you have a better idea of what it's going to take care of yourself. So hopefully you're open to having that help. But I do think home care really does give you the support that you need while still having a little bit more of that independence back. Yeah, it's more your real life, right? Because a lot of people will say that in the skilled nursing facility, I can do this when I get home. It's not a problem. Why am I doing this right now? I don't need to practice this. I've been putting my pants on my whole life, Jonathan. I love that one. That's my favorite. But then at home, then you get a more of a real taste of what you need.
And
they're so patient, the therapists.
On the other side of things, when you have the client who's afraid to go home.
Yeah.
When you have a client that's afraid to go home and they're completely overwhelmed with the idea. Yeah. I have this rule, the personal rule that I use. Any client who I've had a chance to review their chart, and I've had a chance to see what their social support is going to look like and their home setting is going to look like. I know they have family members that are going to be there, but they truly are just terrified. Yeah. And they want so much more service than what home care is built on.
Or what they actually physically
They
need.
need.
It's that confidence that's been knocked down so bad.
So what I do is I say, I will not let you fail. I will
Aww.
not let you fail. Go home, and in 3 days, I'm going to call you. And if you feel the same way, we're going to find what's best for you. Oftentimes, it's the fear of transitioning.
Yeah, because, well, in hospital, there's beeping, everybody's running around all crazy. Same thing in SNF. It go, you do have more alone time. You mentioned that, like, you're not busy 24/7,
Right.
but there's people around.
I say, oftentimes, more likely than not, their nerves are settled. They have more confidence in their ability. They're in their own landscape, and they feel a lot better. But when I talk to them from they're in the hospital, they do not have that level of confidence. So I just want to talk to them again once they've settled in. And usually I feel like I'm talking to a different person.
Yeah. I had a client one time that I seen, they went home, and she was so anxious about being home, even though it was an independent community. There's people around, and she would like go on walks. Like they had like a walking group that would meet every time, and she did that, and she still didn't really need a cane, but she was like dead set on having to use it. And she was so anxious that she was like shaking like a leaf when she was standing, like just death grip.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you just start slow and build their confidence again. Like, hey, I'll be your walking group. So let's see how far you can, like, what did you used to do in the community? How far did you walk? Let's do it. A few times, right? You can just see the change. By the time we discharged, she was no cane, running back with her crew again. But it's
back to normal life, which is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. I'll never forget her though. I've never seen like physically just terrified.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, we would before we got on here today.
Yes, exactly. I know the feeling.
I'm just kidding. Obviously, home health here. We got home health guy here with us today. I do briefly would like to talk about PARC. You gave our audience so much information about discharge planning. I really think as we age, having those plans in our head, obviously you don't always know what can happen, again, crisis situations, but like, what would I do? What would I want in this situations? Having that, just thinking about it, like you said, reflecting about what I would want if something does happen. Having those plans is crucial. That goes back with like estate planning, or God forbid someone's incapacitated, but having those things in your mind, like, would I want to go to subacute? Would I want home health care? All of those types of things. So much good information, so much good insight. Thank you so much. But I do want to talk about PARC specifically. Like, where are you located? How can they call you?
Okay.
Personally.
On a business card that's in everybody's folder. So our office, PARC Home Care, we're located in West Bloomfield. But what I love about what we do is, we go all over, and we cover the Tri-County, and thankfully we've been growing, and covering more of the outskirts suburbs, around Detroit as well. If anybody needs the type of care that we provide, which is skilled home care, and the need for a nurse, the need for physical, occupational, or speech therapy, if any of those, if you have a family member discharging from a hospital or discharging from a skilled nursing facility, and you want to have some input to the agency that you'd want caring for your loved one, then please, look us up. Our website is parkhomecare.com.
They don't have to look too far. Tell them your phone number.
You can call our office. Our number is 248-328-2939. And just get a feel for the type of care that you would want for your family members, and hopefully that we would provide it.
I think it's really important to mention too, like you can get home care without having a hospital or a rehab stay. If you are noticing, or you're feeling more unsteady on your feet at home, or you've recently had a fall that didn't require a hospitalization, go to your primary care doctor and say, hey, listen, this is what I'm noticing. They'll talk to you about it and say, hey, is home health something that can help me?
Yeah, the beauty of it is when we communicate with the physician's office, if that were to occur, is we can start pretty quickly, within a day. Within a day, when we have the right paperwork. So oftentimes people call and they get surprised that it moves so quickly. But it's what we pride ourselves on.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing too. I mean, Also, like, you guys have different types of programs too. I want to mention that. Obviously, you listed what services are available. Physical and occupational therapy.
That's right.
That's combined. That's a new one. But you have like fall prevention programs. You have step down programs that you sort of specialize in to help those clients if that's what their need is.
Absolutely. I mean, the more we've been in the industry, the more we've been caring for people, the more we recognize needs. So cardiac programs, remote telemonitoring.
That's huge.
Yes, it is.
And because the goal is to stay out of the hospital, they do have someone that you can call and ask questions. Obviously, you'll have the phone number to clinicians and stuff who are yours that are coming to your home and seeing you. But there also is like a line that they can call if something happens at 10 o'clock at night.
So it's not only encouraged, it's expected. You know, we are your healthcare provider. So if you need anything, you do call a 24-hour line. But even with remote telemonitoring, you know, with congestive heart failure, you know, we have heart rate monitors or pulse oximeters that do distribute data, you know.
That is amazing.
Yes.
Is it the scale? The scale will like send the...
Yes, correct. So we do receive data, and it's our way of keeping track of our clients. It's our way of being able to share information with their physicians and being able to make educated decisions
faster, quicker
on what to do next.
That's right.
If it's changing medications, if it's sending out a nurse, if it is having to go to the ER, whatever is best for our client, we want to be able to have real-time data so that we can do things.
I think that's a really important question to ask because I don't think every home care company offers that kind of service. They might have the 24-hour line, but they might not necessarily have the scales that, like, even when they're not there, like, hey, can you go and stand on this so we can still have a wait 7 days a week, not just the 3 that were there.
Correct.
Because with heart failure, especially like you said, what do they got, a 3-pound?
Yeah,
3-pound window, no more than
plus
that.
Plus or minus, that's right.
So I think that's an amazing service. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about PARC?
You know, one big thing that I'm personally very excited about is PARC is going to be adding hospice service. So
we'll have to have you on again to talk about that.
coming soon. We will be PARC Home Health and Hospice, and we're really proud and excited to be able to provide more service to our community.
Yeah. So I remember when you were here the first time, you were talking about getting started, how you create a home care, and then you were talking about this big, huge book. I'm sure he's got another big, huge book on his desk.
I did.
With all of those.
I did read another book. I did read another book.
It's like an encyclopedia, let's be honest. I mean, a book isn't doing it justice. It's just massive. So, we wish you all the best. I'm so glad to have you here as many times as I could. If I can talk Paul into having you be a regular host, I'm more than happy with it.
Thanks, Kori.
You're welcome. I encourage our audience to reach out to PARC, even if they just have questions about home care. I mean, they might not be able to necessarily serve you, but I think that they're a wonderful resource for clients. And I think Jonathan is such a giving and caring person that I think he would try to answer some questions for you.
I appreciate that.
If he doesn't want to, you can call me or you can email me, kl@theseniormovers.com or at 586-204-8500. Again, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have you back on when you're ready to talk more about some other things. But again, you can reach PARC at 248-328-2939 or parkhomecare.com.
Thanks, Kori.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Senior Podcast Show.